Close your eyes and imagine with me waking up one day and your best friend tells you that they want to have a doctor help them commit suicide because they are depressed or do not feel loved. Journalist research stated in a 2017 article by Denise Marie Orway that as of the late 2017, physician-assisted suicide is legal in 6 states: Oregon, California, Vermont, Washington, Colorado, and Montana. The Gospel Correlation stated in a 2016 article by Joe Carter that currently 1 in 6 Americans lives in a state where a doctor can prescribe a lethal dose of drugs to a patient. Today we're going to talk about how assisted suicide works, alternative options, and why assisted suicide should not be legal. The first thing we're going to talk about is steps involved in assisted suicide. So in a 2005 article called How Does Assisted Suicide Work by Daniel Enberg, he stated that the first step is to make a formal oral request. And then at least 15 days later, you need to make another oral request. However, the doctor won't be able to prescribe lethal drugs until you file a written request signed by 2 witnesses. And then, however, by law, a second physician still must review the case and sign off on the first doctor's diagnosis. A doctor can prescribe lethal drugs 2 days after receiving a written request, but is not allowed by any means to administer drugs by themselves. A doctor can get in serious trouble if he was to just prescribe any patient that walks through the door a way to a lethal dose of an injection that can kill themselves or that can cause them to just, slowly slip away. Assisted suicide is by no means an easy process. I mean, if they made it as easy as it is to get painkillers, then too many people would take advantage of it. So now that we've talked a little bit about the steps when it comes to assisted suicide, let's talk about a few alternative options. So palliative sedation involves giving a person medication to make them unconscious and therefore unaware of the pain. So this is often used in people with terminal illnesses. And this was stated in a 2011 article by Our Health Services. So palliative sedation is pretty much just a way to keep the person alive and living their life, but they will feel no pain. They will feel no unnecessary pain. And so that's a really great alternative option. There are many different treatments that can be used to sustain life with serious terminal illnesses. So one option could be nutrition support through a feeding tube. Another option could be dialysis, where a machine completely takes over the function of your kidneys. Or you could be on a ventilator, which is a machine that takes over the breathing for your body completely. Now, alternative options are not always someone's favorite, but you really have to take into consideration what assisted suicide, the impact that it could have on your friends, on your family, what it could have on yourself. Because, when people are in terminal illnesses, they're not always thinking right. They're not always in a good state of mind where they can make a clear decision of whether they really want to have this injection and really just be gone completely. And so now that we have discussed alternative options, let's move on to why assisted suicide should not be legal. According to Disability Rights, Education, and Defense Fund, the movement of legalization and assisted suicide is driven by anecdotes of people who suffer greatly in the period before they die. But the overwhelming majority of these anecdotes describes either situations for which legal alternatives exist today or of options in which the individual would not be legally eligible for assisted suicide. And so assisted suicide is one thing that is not actually, not everybody is eligible for it. And so there are people that try to they're trying to get it legalized completely so that anybody can do it, so that you don't have to fill out your written form. You don't have to have witnesses. You don't have to meet with a doctor. I was reading, you have to be in a physical, healthy state of mind or you're not eligible for it. And so people are trying to push and push and push for this to be legalized just so anybody is able to do it. And so this fear of disability typically underlies in assisted suicide Jeanette Good, an assisted suicide advocate who worked with Jack Kevorkian in bringing about the death of several people with disabilities, said, "Pain is not the main reason we want to die. It is the indignity. It's the inability to get out of bed and go get onto the toilet. People say, I can't stand my mother or my husband wiping my butt. It's about dignity. People get worried that when they get into that state of terminal illness, or they get into that state of where they can't do anything for themselves, and they have to have somebody come in and help them take a shower, or help them feed themselves, or help them go to the bathroom, that they get embarrassed. They lose that dignity. They lose the fact that they can't do normal stuff by themselves anymore. And so a 2018 poll by Gallup displayed that a solid majority of Americans, with 72% in favor, support laws allowing patients to seek the assistance of a physician in ending their life. Nevertheless, assisted suicide remains illegal in the majority of the states across the nation. And so today we have discussed the steps involved in assisted suicide, alternate options when it comes to assisted suicide, and why it should not be legal. And I hope that this has opened your eyes to why doctors all around the world should not be allowed to help somebody commit suicide.